John. What are they building next door to from Hardy?
What?
John, you getting slack on your you getting slack on your
Tropical grill? Okay.
We're good.
You got it ready? Y'all ready? Good evening. We'd like to welcome you to this regularly scheduled meeting for the City of Greer Planning Commission. Before we get started, I want to just advise everybody at 7 o'clock tonight, the city is going to be testing fireworks not for this year for the 4th of July, but for next year, because they're typically shot down here at the Victor Ball Field, but they're going to move locations after this year. So the fireworks, they're going to start testing at 7 o'clock tonight, so it may be loud in here if we're still here at 7 o'clock. They're going to be shooting them, I'm told, from the top of the parking garage, so it will be behind you and in front of us. All right, with that said, this is a regular scheduled meeting for the City of Greer Planning Commission. If there's anybody on the commission tonight that will need to recuse themselves from any of the items that are before us, you'll just need to fill out a recusal form and step away at the time that we bring that piece of business. I don't know that that will affect anybody tonight. All right, moving on, I trust everybody's had a chance to look at the minutes from our January 22nd meeting. Do we have any additions, subtractions, discussion?
Move to approve. Second.
Have a motion, and we have Ms. Scott, Ms. Jones, sorry. Second, let's vote.
Ms. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Cerno?
Yes.
Mr. Lavender?
Yes.
Mr. Booker?
Yes.
Mr. Lamb?
Yes.
Mr. Holland?
Yes. All right, moving forward, we'll move into the public hearing portion of the meeting. During this time, we will open and close the hearing for each request that is before us tonight. It'll start with the staff giving just the basic information for the particular item before us. And then we will ask the applicant to come to the podium here and state your name and address for the record. We are recording audio and video in this room. So please come to the podium and just give us the basic information for your request. Afterwards, anyone that is in the audience that would like to speak for or against that particular piece of business will be given the opportunity to come to the podium. And we'll give you 3 minutes to speak. If there's anyone here that's have multiple people here to speak on the same thing, just don't repeat what the previous person has said. If you have some additional information that we need to hear, we want to hear it, but we don't need to regurgitate the same things over and over. It just makes us have to stay here longer. All right, so with that said, we will open the public hearing. Our first order of business is PP 24-01.
Okay, for this case, the applicant is Site Design, Inc., and the address is off of Memorial Drive Extension. Parcel ID number for the record is G0190101010102. Parcel is zoned medium density residential, and the request is for preliminary plat approval. Here is the preliminary plat showing 2 quadplexes for a total of 8 additional units. And that concludes this case.
All right, do we have the applicant present?
Good evening, Ethan Olive, Site Design, 225 Rocky Creek Road, Greenville, South Carolina. As mentioned, preliminary plat for 2 quad for a total of 8 units. The parking will be provided in the driveway as well as the garages for the units. In addition, we've added some parking on the side, as you can see. Access will be maintained through the existing development. The access you see going out to Memorial Drive is for emergency vehicles only, which all of this has been coordinated with SCDOT as well as the local fire department. And other than that, just here to answer any questions for anybody.
All right, Thank you, sir. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak for or against PP 24-01?
I'm not for or against, I just have
If
a
you'll
question.
please come to
Okay.
the podium, ma'am.
Oh. So what I want to know,
Please start, state your name.
my name is Carla Parks, and I live at 553 Memorial Drive Extension. I live in Park Ridge Commons, which is where this is happening.
Okay.
Okay. And the only thing I want to know, actually, Alan had come to a neighborhood meeting and we talked about it. I just want to make sure that we're still going to repave the existing lot because there's a hole in it already. And if more cars are going to come through there, it's going to be an issue with that parking lot.
Okay. Anything else?
I think. The dumpsters. We need to know where the trash dumpster's going to be placed. And that's it.
All right.
Okay,
Thanks, ma'am.
thanks.
Is there anyone else that would like to speak for or against PP 24-01? All right, seeing none, we'll close the public hearing for PP 24-01, and we will open the public hearing for AN 24-01.
Okay, this property is, was off of Arlington Road, and the parcel ID is 9-03-00-71.00. Property is currently located in Spartanburg County, and the request is to annex and zone to OP Office Professional. The purpose of the rezoning is to develop a church facility. Here's an aerial of the subject property. The purple is CC Commercial Corridor, the mint is Commercial General, and that darker green is Suburban Neighborhood. Future land use designation is Suburban Commercial. Here's an image of the existing site, and that concludes staff's presentation.
All right, thank you. Do we have the applicant present? Yes, sir. You'd like to come to the podium?
Thank
Just
you.
anything you want to tell us about?
Yes, thank you and good evening. My name is Hector Rodriguez, and we would like to build.
Address, sir?
The address of the site.
Your
1710 Buncombe Road, Greenville, South Carolina. And we would like to annex this parcel to the city of Greer because we would like to build a church worship center for our Hispanic community in the area. And this is one of our projects, and I think this is we have been praying the Lord for plant a church here because there is a lot of Hispanic, and we want to reach them with the gospel of the Bible.
All right. Thank you,
That's
sir.
it. Thank you.
Is there anyone here that would like to speak for or against AN 24-01? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing for AN 24-01, and we'll open the public hearing for AN 24-02.
Okay, for this case, the address is 145 Fernwood Drive. Parcel ID number is 9-03-00-032.00. The request is to annex and zone to suburban neighborhood, and the purpose of the rezoning is to obtain city services. So here's an aerial image of the parcel. It is surrounded by suburban neighborhood zoning, and the future land use designation is traditional neighborhood. Here is a picture of the subject property, which will stay in its current configuration. That concludes.
Okay. And do we have the applicant?
Did I state my name?
Yes, ma'am.
It's Samantha Bennett at 145 Fernwood Drive. Just requesting I get city trash services and landscape services.
All right. Anything else?
That's it.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am. Is there anyone here that would like to speak for or against AN 24-02? All right, seeing none, we'll close the public hearing for AN 24-02, and we'll open the public hearing for RZ 24-01.
All right, for this case, the address is 863 Gap Creek Road. Parcel ID number is a portion of 5-14-00-047.00. Parcel is currently zoned suburban neighborhood, and the request is to rezone a portion to commercial corridor with the intent of building a crematorium. And so here is a survey showing the specific portion requesting the rezoning, and this is the entire site aerial. Current zoning map showing suburban neighborhood in light purple and commercial corridor in dark purple. Future land use designation is traditional neighborhood, and an image of the existing site, the Wood Memorial Park.
All right, do we have the applicant?
Good evening. I'm Gabe Waters, 201 Fairview Avenue in Greenville, South Carolina. So our client actually is not Wood Memorial Park. It's actually the Wood Mortuary, who everybody here knows. They've owned this cemetery for a long time. I think the original deed was in the early 1950s. They've got a bunch of excess land. They would like to use some of that excess land to build a crematory there on their site because, for however many years they've been outsourcing that, so they want to bring that in-house. It's about a 1,000 square foot building that's being proposed. It's really small, and as you can see, it sits way back off the road. And I'm trying to think if there's any other information. There's no, they want to point out that there's no real emissions or anything that comes out of this this building. It's basically steam that comes out. So if anybody's got any questions, I'm happy to answer.
We'll do that in a few minutes. All right, thank you. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak for or against RZ 24-01? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing for RZ 24-01. And we will open the public hearing for miscellaneous 24-01.
Thank you. This is the first round of amendments for the Unified Development Ordinance that was adopted in December of 2023. There is a table with kind of a package of amendments. We won't be taking them on a kind of one-to-one basis, but rather as a package. But we can certainly discuss during new business any that you have concerns or questions about.
All right. Do we need to ask the question for the audience also during this? Okay, so is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak for or against the miscellaneous 24-01 Unified Development Amendment? All right, seeing none, we'll close the public hearing for miscellaneous 24-01. This will conclude our public hearing portion of the meeting. We will now move on to the new business portion of the meeting. During this time, staff will make their full recommendation to this board for the particular piece of business that is before us. We will ask the applicant to come to the podium again and answer any questions that we may have, or we may ask staff questions, and we possibly may ask our audience questions during that time. So with that being said, we will make a recommendation to City Council. Now, this is not our typical meeting night. We typically meet the third Monday of each month, but due to the holiday last week of President's Day, we were pushed back a week. City Council actually will meet in this room tomorrow, but I don't believe any of these pieces of business will come before council this week. Is that correct? So it will be March before, and council meets on the second and fourth Tuesday of the month, so it would be at the earliest the second Tuesday in March before any of these pieces of business before us tonight would come to council for additional approval or denial or acceptance in that regard. We are typically, we are just making a recommendation to council based on the information that we have received from the applicants and from staff. So we are not the final deciding factor on the majority of this that is before us tonight. So with that said, we will open new business PP 24-01.
Okay, again, this case is a preliminary plat for approval of 8 units off of Memorial Drive Extension. Here is the plat itself. It was reviewed by Planning Advisory Committee at its June 8th, 2023 meeting, and in accordance with the guidelines set forth in the Unified Development Ordinance and Engineering Manual, staff supports the request. All comments from other agencies and departments in the city must also be met prior to site development plan approval.
Okay. Can we get the applicant back up, please?
Name?
Yes, please.
Ethan Olive, Site Design, 225 Rocky Creek Road, Greenville, South Carolina.
Thank you. So you heard the concerns from several of the folks in the area. I believe they said potholes and location of trash. Can you kind of
Sure.
speak to those?
Yeah, absolutely. So as for the repaving of the road, that was not within our scope as a part of this project. So that would be a discussion for the homeowners association to have. And then as for the trash, and I can point to it up, I'll point to it here in just a second, but we'll be using a Sutera in-ground unit, which I believe are pretty prevalent here around the city, that drops in the ground. And the circle, the circle that's being pointed out on the screen there is the Sutera in-ground unit.
Okay. And this is part of a larger unit that is already in place?
There is an,
Yes, this is part of the Hillington Place subdivision.
Like the second phase of this, or an
Yes.
additional street?
Yes,
Okay.
so they're basically adding to the existing development.
All right. And so the HOA has already taken the development over? Contractors aren't still in charge of that?
The HOA is in charge of it, as far as I know,
So they're concerned about the roads, that would be
an HOA.
the HOA, because it's a private road, it's not city street.
That's correct.
Okay. All right.
I don't know if the owner wants to address that. The road is part of a private parcel that's owned by Mr. West.
Oh, the road's not part of the HOA.
So the road is privately owned by Mr. West, not by the HOA?
You want to speak on it?
I can,
Yeah.
but I would expect the homeowners to.
Please come to the podium, Mr. West, and state your name and address for the record, please.
What was the question? I expect the homeowners on the, what's been there, because so far, they hadn't done anything.
I'm gonna stop you. If you'll state your name and address for
Oh,
the
I'm
record,
sorry.
please.
This is Alan West. This is Park Ridge Commons. I built 26 units there about 20 years ago. And up till now, the property owners were supposed to keep everything according to the bylaws. And they've done pretty well about keeping the grounds covered. But they hadn't done anything to the parking. And I would expect them to do some help, because they put a dumpster there, and it's so heavy that it's damaged over 25 years. It's damaged some of the pavement, and so I'm hoping that if the city approves, that we will do everything new. It's going to be fairly expensive, and I would hope this will make it better for everybody involved. And I would hope that they would, we hadn't talked about it yet, but I would hope they would help me some with the dues that they've accumulated to do that part of that driveway.
Well, that's totally a separate issue from what's before us tonight, and it's not part of our privy, but I was just hoping we could get those questions answered for the residents tonight.
Yeah,
Well,
we'll
did
do
we
that.
establish who owns the street in question?
I beg your pardon?
Did we establish who owns?
Yeah, I own the parking lots coming in, but is that what you're talking about?
Yes, sir.
Yeah,
Where the pothole is?
yeah, where the potholes are, yeah. I own it, but they're supposed to keep it up between the two of us.
So it sounds like y'all need to have
Yeah,
a conversation between the owner and the residents, because that's totally out of our privy.
Yeah, that's right. And we had talked about that before.
Okay.
That'll have to be done, before. I mean, if you approve it, they don't approve it, it'll stay like it is for 25 more years.
All right, thank you, sir. All right, do we have any further questions for the applicant or for staff?
No,
Do we have a recommendation, a motion?
I make a motion to approve.
yeah.
We have a
Second.
motion for approval, and we have a second. Let's vote.
Ms. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Acerno?
Yes.
Mr. Lavender?
Yes.
Mr. Booker?
Yes.
Mr. Lamb?
Yes.
Mr. Holland?
Yes. All right, thank you. Contact staff for next steps. All right, now we'll open the new business portion for AN 24-01.
Okay, again, the request is to annex and zone to office professional, the aerial image and current zoning, the existing site, surrounding land uses are residential and commercial. The request is compatible with surrounding land uses and would serve as a buffer between commercial and residential uses. Therefore, staff supports the request and recommends approval.
All right, can we get the applicant back up?
Hector Rodriguez, 1710 Buncombe Road, Greenville, South Carolina.
Yes, sir. All right, do we have any questions for the applicant? This is the property directly across the street from the highway department.
Correct.
Yes,
Yes. It's a beautiful property.
I may have missed that, staff. So this is being asked to be zoned to office professional?
That is correct.
And is there church being put on it?
Yes.
Okay.
And this is with the new UDO regulations, correct?
Yes.
All right. So this will be like one of the first ones we've done under the new UDOs, correct?
Yes.
All right.
Motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Let's vote.
Ms. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Acerno?
Yes.
Mr. Lavender?
Yes.
Mr. Booker?
Yes.
Mr. Lamb?
Yes.
Mr. Holland?
Yes. All right, contact staff for next steps, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
About previous, is it open now?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
We weren't able to say anything then?
No, that was during the public hearing portion of the meeting. After that, new business portion, unless we ask you a question, we don't have any further discussion. And that's not something that's between us, the city, Mr. West, and you guys, okay? That's something between y'all and Mr. West, because it's totally separate from what he was here for tonight.
And if you have a complaint about property maintenance, you need to contact our code enforcement. Yes, sir.
When he was talking about the road short, due to the dumpster being put down on the bottom of that dumpster recently, the bottom of the road was in bad shape before.
Well, that has nothing to do with us.
If it's a property maintenance issue, you need to contact code enforcement, and we will look at the condition of the roadway during the final plat inspection, but that would have to go through grading and everything first. Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Parks, before you go, could you please fill out the public hearing sheet?
I already have my name on it.
Okay, thank you. Did you? Okay. Thank you.
Well, it's not
Did
this
you-
one, so I'll do this.
Okay.
Okay, we will now open the new business portion of the meeting for AN 24-02.
Okay, this request is to annex and zone to suburban neighborhood, the aerial and current zoning, and the existing site. Surrounding land use is all residential. The request is compatible with surrounding land uses. Therefore, staff supports the request and recommends approval.
All right, do we need to have the applicant come back, or are we good?
Good, move to approve.
Second.
Motion and a second for approval? Let's vote.
Ms. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Cerno?
Yes.
Mr. Lavender?
Yes.
Mr. Booker?
Yes.
Mr. Lamb?
Yes.
Mr. Holland?
Yes. Contact staff for next steps, and that will not come up to council until March meetings, either the first or second meeting of the month. I'm not sure which at this point. So, yes, ma'am. Okay, we will now open the new business portion for RZ 24-01.
Okay, again, this request is to rezone to commercial corridor for purpose of a crematorium. The survey showing the specific portion requesting the rezoning, the aerial of the entire parcel, and the existing site. The surrounding land use is commercial, residential, and industrial. The request is compatible with surrounding land uses, therefore staff supports the request. And the parcel is flanked to the east by heavy commercial uses with a large buffer, and to the west is the existing cemetery, again, why staff supports the request.
All right. Waters, you want to come back up here? And anything else you want to tell us?
No, I don't have anything.
We have any questions for the applicant or for staff? All right, do we have a motion?
Move to approve.
I'll second.
Motion, and I believe I heard,
That goes Judy.
okay.
Ms. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Cerno?
Yes.
Mr. Lavender?
Yes.
Mr. Booker?
Yes.
Mr. Lamb?
Yes.
Mr. Holland?
Yes. All right.
Thank you.
Contact staff for next steps. Yes, sir. Good to see you. All right, new business portion now for miscellaneous 24-01. Staff.
Let me try and get this a little bigger for you.
Y'all don't
guys.
want to stay and hear this?
I think it's going to be interesting.
Okay, so we can do this kind of any way you want. You guys have received a table with a list of amendments with the corresponding section. You also received a redlined draft that shows the proposed changes. I can go through them one by one. We can go through them by section, or we could call out specific ones that you have questions or problems with. I will say that the very first chunk all have to do with landscaping and tree preservation. They were comments from Upstate Forever. They were given to us right before the adoption of the UDO, and so staff submitted them to the consultant, Kim Lehorn, their landscape group to review, and it was just not enough of a turnaround, and we let them know that we would address any of their concerns during this first round of amendments. So I'd say about half, we did make some small changes addressing their concerns, talking about invasive species, adding a few to the prohibited list, adding some language about referencing other kind of best practice standards. And then there were a number that we felt went a little too far or that our staff would not be able to enforce. So we did not propose some updates. So again, that's about half, and I'm happy to go through them one by one if you'd like, or if you have any questions about the Upstate Forever.
Since this is coming to us, is this the final say on this amendment, or does it have to go to council?
It has to go to council, 2 readings. Yes, sir.
2 readings. And you said this is just the first. Are there already on the table some amendments?
We fully expected, and we let council know during the process that this first year of using the UDO that we very much expected to have bi-monthly, quarterly, or at least biannual updates. So this is the first round, and we are still researching a few that council mentioned during second reading. So we do expect to have several over the next year. And then, of course, moving forward, we hope to have fewer and fewer as we go forward.
So are the ones we're looking at the ones that already went through you guys and you're on board with?
Yes, we only put the ones where we said no update proposed. There are no red lines in the code for those.
So, things like I see, like a ISA certified arborist is going to be consulted during inspections and issued prior to issuing of a CO?
Yes, I believe we did not have an update for that one, just because we did not have that on staff.
The city doesn't have an arborist, I'm sure, on staff, right?
Correct. So we just thought that comment would a little, fireworks. Would you like to request, or would you like to have a 2-minute recess?
I don't see any light.
I see it.
Oh, do you?
Yeah.
Oh, I do see them now, yes. Okay.
Yeah, let the record show there is a fireworks
We're not being
exhibit
shot
directly
at.
outside the building.
Fireworks.
Joel definitely didn't run in to check on us, did he?
Joel.
Joel is not here
He's not here tonight, so,
Joel's tonight.
yeah.
He didn't get the memo that we were not meeting last week. So do y'all want to run through this one by one, or are we good just to, I can see it much better on this screen.
I like the sections. Just take it by section.
Okay, so this first one is kind of all upstate forever comments. Would you like me to pull up the red line of the draft, or do you have any questions about the specific ones on this section?
So just to be clear, the no update proposed means there was no...
No amendment.
Gotcha.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And the ones that we are making changes to, are these changes being made to items that you guys as staff came up with during this process, or is this all part of the big package from the company that we hired to do all this?
So I will say that there are sections that staff had a heavy hand in, and then there were sections that we relied very heavily on the consultant. Landscaping requirements and tree save was one of those sections that we relied very heavily, and they actually even consulted out to their landscape architecture team. We also had, the mayor did a pretty thorough review, and we made a lot of changes before it got adopted. And then Kimley Horn reviewed these comments and gave us guidance on which ones to accept and which not. And then staff took a second pass and took their advice on most of them, but not all of them.
Okay.
So we did kind of update to best practices for the region, especially with the invasive species. We did take some species off because they didn't agree that they were native. We did have an additional allowance for passive open space if they're allowing or utilizing low impact development. We added a lot of references and again, kind of best practice standards to the sections. And then there was one that we already felt the section adequately addressed. And then the rest, we felt that the city was not kind of equipped to either enforce or that it went a little further than we were ready to do at this time.
Okay, so the tree thing, which jumped out at me,
Sure.
I guess it's you too, right?
Yeah.
Tree preservation?
Who, if we require a new development to come in and you're gonna take out all these trees, you gotta put in 20 oaks, you gotta put in 20 of poplars and who from the city is qualified to make sure that gets done and the correct species is being planted? Since we don't officially have an arborist, are we gonna call somebody and pay them to come out and make sure that that's done?
No, so we already had those standards. So we typically look at it in very fine detail during the landscape plan, and then we go out to see if it
So you really
passed the smell check.
you really are looking at what they're planting during the landscape portion.
Oh, yes.
And they're naming the species.
Yes.
Okay.
A number and species and location on the landscape plan.
And it's a credit.
Yes.
And we're actually doing that?
Depending on how many
Yes.
trees at a certain size will count towards credits if you leave those trees on site. So you get to keep those credits.
Okay.
If you take out X number of hardwood species, those count against your credits, and those are the credits you have to replace.
Yeah. And then if you have none on site,
Not so much as that you have to plant this many oaks to catch back up.
Correct.
It's you have this many credits to replenish on your property.
Right.
Here's your tree survey, you've got this many credits that are already there. So if you're gonna take half your credits away, you've got to replenish half your credits.
and if your site is completely cleared, then you have to still have 10% tree at a rate of 34 trees per acre.
34 trees per acre. Well, if you planted 34 oaks per acre, in about 20 years, those things would be choking each other out. Is that taken into account? Like the oaks that we have here on this property, if they were a whole lot closer, they don't have a lot of room now to get a whole lot bigger.
Yeah, they have spacing requirements too.
Okay. Not for when they're planted, but when they fully
Correct.
mature. You're talking
Based on
a
the species.
plant that's
Yeah.
50 to 100 years of lifespan.
And look, these are set by Kimley Horn's landscape architect,
Okay.
outsourced, client there, or their vendor. So then when these get applied to a job, the client here, the developer here, is gonna have to rely on their landscape architect to interpret all of this and come up with a plan that meets the criteria. And then it's a lot easier once those tables are put on a development plan, it's a lot easier for staff to look at them and say, yes, this matches. These credits have been applied, these credits have been removed, and it falls
Okay.
into place.
Okay.
And then we also do go out before a property is signed off on or CO'd, and we do bring the landscape plan and count trees and shrubs. Yep.
Trees grow.
Now, can I say
and you
with
mark the
100% certainty that it's the exact shrub that they said? No.
But you're sitting out knows the difference between a maple, a poplar, an oak. I'm sure I'm leaving some out. Or
A lot of
river
them at
birch.
this stage, they're still tagged.
Still
You
tagged.
understand, they're coming from nurseries. So
Yeah.
when you're
Right.
planting trees
Yeah,
like
they're
this,
still
so
tagged.
there's a difference
30
in-
different oaks.
So staff can go out and see a clear difference between a non-disturbed area, and this is what the plan shows should not be disturbed. And then we should have a little park right here, or a little, vegetated area right here that's to be planted, a vegetative berm that's to be planted, everything.
Okay.
And we do actually have an arborist on the Parks and Rec staff that if we had concerns about it, we would certainly give him a call. He's offered his assistance before. We can't send him out on every single inspection, but if we had concerns based on what we were seeing,
Or is he just also?
is something else. I'm not.
They have,
I'm
Parks
not
and Rec
100%
used to
sure.
have 2 arborists on staff.
Yeah. So that's not their full job, but we could consult them if needed.
I know Will is saying, that trees are tagged, but, people make mistakes. What if somebody tagged a Bradford pear as a maple tree? And it hadn't started flourishing yet, and you stick
Yeah.
that's what I'm concerned
Well,
about.
if we went and visited it later and it looked off, they're tied to what's in the site plan, so we'd issue with them a violation and they'd have to take it out and replant
How long
it, so
are they required to be responsible for that?
forever.
Forever? Okay.
So this is for new development only?
Well, it would apply to new projects since adoption of the UDO. For projects, not like a person just building a lot on their, like a
I
home.
can put that in my yard.
What? I missed that.
She said she wanted to know how many she could cut down in her yard. If
Oh,
y'all
you're
gonna
fine.
come.
It doesn't really apply to like a single home. It's for like a project or a neighborhood or a commercial site.
So is everybody good with the first side of this sheet of paper?
Yes.
Can we flip over to the next side?
Yes.
Okay, so the next section is having to do with cluster development.
Yes.
And so we do have a comment from an engineer that's working on a project who's done a lot of projects in the South and North Carolina area. These changes are on page 303 and 304 of your draft, if you'd like to flip to them to see the red lines. We did review with them that staff was planning to make some changes to allow cluster to have 5-foot side setbacks. That was something that was in our old zoning ordinance that didn't get carried over, and it was kind of inadvertent. So we felt comfortable with reducing that. One thing that we've heard, we've met with 3 different developers who are interested in using the cluster development standard. They all kind of had the same feedback that having certain lot types and where they're located on the site isn't typically how they do business. So we kind of want to make a balance, right? We want the city to get better development and preserve open space, but we also want to make it to where it's an incentive to actually want to use cluster. So we do feel like reducing it to 2 different lot sizes or product types is reasonable. And then
What is it right now?
it was 3, and now we would 3 different types.
3 different types.
3 different types of lots or product types in one development.
Okay.
So we've amended that to be 2. And then the third one, currently the code allows 30% of buffer to be counted towards required open space. Staff was initially thinking that we would exclude that altogether and that 100% could not be counted. And after looking at some other jurisdictions, we do think 30 is a good number. So that is what we are proposing. We took that suggestion. So again, that's page 303 and 304. And again, cluster is an option that they can get reduced lot sizes and or setbacks for, in return, having higher quality building materials and having more open space than traditional zoning.
Anybody need a will to translate that for us?
Sorry. Okay. Are you guys okay if we move forward? Or you want a minute to look at the red lines?
Y'all good?
Yeah.
Y'all good down on this?
Okay.
All right, yeah, let's move forward.
Okay, so the next package of amendments are staff initiated. These have just come through when we have gotten new developments. We've taken projects through PAC. We've gotten calls or inquiries, and we've had to consult the UDO and kind of, give people things. We've just caught some things that we don't like quite as much as we thought we would. So the first one is, we've never had this before, but it's been a very big problem with current projects. We are proposing to add a provision that for a site development plan, and that is civil drawings and stormwater study. We are proposing that if there's not activity or new submittal with substantive changes within 6 months, that it will be considered inactive and withdrawn, and they have to reapply. Now we did add some language saying they could apply for an extension with staff, and we could grant potentially up to 6 months. So they would have a year.
A lot now.
It's not happening a lot, but it's happening enough that it's quite problematic. We have 2 projects that are from 2021 that they submitted and have been on hold, and things have changed a lot.
This is applying to projects that have been through the application process and been approved.
They started the application process and did not get approved.
Okay.
Would this apply to, like, in most recent history, Trine Street, North Tryon, where we had to keep going back and holding public hearings? I mean, is that the type of thing you're talking about, or is it bigger than that?
It's bigger than that. It's once they get to civil design and they go ahead and submit and they start review with staff, and then they sit there for 6 months, a year and a half,
Like before they get back to you.
2.5 years, and then they.
Really, it's not even coming to us yet. I mean, the stuff
stuff we
that's-
have.
No, this is all staff review. It's once the rezoning or once the entitlement has been approved, it's the actual site drawing that we're having somebody come back 2 years later, and you basically have to start the review from scratch.
Is 6 months too long?
I think we're not sure, so we wanted to start there
Well,
because
let
we've
me-
never
let me-
done this
let me ask
before.
Let me ask you this then, if we give them 6 months, but during that 6-month period, something has changed with the UDO, an amendment.
I
then
think
are
in
they-
that case, we would probably deny them an extension. If something substantive changed, that would affect that site.
Because legally, are they grandfathered in because they started the process 5 months, 29 days, and 18 hours?
Technically, yes, once you've submitted for an
But-
SDP.
Yeah, but they've drugged their feet for whatever reason.
Right.
And the city made a change 2 weeks after their application.
6 months.
Yeah. Do you think it should be less?
No, I was just asking. Based
Hey,
on,
I
based
think
on
it's
what you
brilliant.
got on the table right now, I mean,
Wait till the next time the economy tanks and have a dozen projects or a dozen projects don't
they
happen.
don't need to have 3 years to
Yeah.
come back and change.
I agree, because, I mean, you may not even be able to remember. who
No,
you
we
dealt with.
basically have to start over.
Yeah.
Right.
We've had 3 in the last 4 months that have had this issue. So
Yeah.
Okay.
It's annoying.
Well, it's a waste of time. It's a waste of
it's a lot of
city's
staff resource.
staff.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
It's not fair.
So we don't know if that timing is perfect, but we'd like to give it a try.
That's no different than wasting our time here when we expect you to be here for a meeting and you don't show up.
Very true.
6
We-
months sounds good, let it ride until,
Okay.
see how it works.
Moving on.
So the next section is code enforcement. The first one is, the first amendment is page 42. And this was really just an entire section that was inadvertently left out, and we need to be able to enforce the
Yes, ma'am.
code.
Absolutely.
So it is about a page and a half that talks about violations, notification, penalties, remedies, etc.
Okay.
And there are no substantive changes from the old zoning ordinance. It was just,
Now, would this
Left out.
would apply to developers, or would it apply to anybody that's
Anybody.
involved? Anybody that's involved.
yeah, anybody that's in violation of the zoning ordinance.
Okay.
So, and then we also did add a definition on page 313 for commercial vehicles. That is something that's a very common complaint that code enforcement deals with. And we do not allow commercial vehicles in residential districts, in residential neighborhoods. And so we just added a definition for what exactly a commercial vehicle was so that Joe would have some teeth to enforce that.
You said that was 313?
Where is that?
And that's on page 313 in the definition section. That's Article 8. And this whole section, we did consult with our senior code enforcement officer, Joe Holbrooks.
And does this also apply to like a panel van that has, it's marked up, that, ABC 123 company, and,
If it's just like a van, like a minivan, no. It would be very specifically based on weight, size, axles. And again, Joe has a lot of experience determining which ones meet that criteria. But yeah, if you just have like an F-150 and you have your construction logo on the side with a phone number, that would not be a problem.
that would not be an issue. Okay.
Right, but if you had a backhoe on a trailer attached to that truck, that would be a problem. So,
Okay.
yeah.
That probably affects a lot of neighborhoods in the city.
We get a lot of complaints, yes.
And I know I've had questions about my own neighborhood in the past, and, I've been told we don't get involved with HOA matters. But if it's in here, because it's in our HOA that you can't have a commercial vehicle in the neighborhood if it's marked up and that type of thing.
Oh, well, so we can't enforce that. If it's stricter than ours, we cannot enforce it.
Right,
But if it
but-
meets the definition of what ours doesn't allow, we certainly can.
Okay. All right, Any further questions on that?
Okay, the next one is the permitted use, principal use table. We had allowed vehicle sales and rental in commercial general and commercial corridor, whereas in the old zoning ordinance, we only allowed it in C3, which is commercial corridor, and not C2, which is commercial general. So we are proposing to not allow those uses in commercial general. I think auto-oriented uses like that are much more conducive to the corridors like Wade Hampton or Buncombe that have CC
So if somebody
zoning.
parks a car at their business, somebody parks their car at Chick-fil-A and they put a for sale sign on it, that would not be permitted?
Oh, that'd be a Joe question. I think that'd be a private
I think
issue.
Chick-fil-A
They'd probably
have
have
it
it towed. This is for like a car dealership or a Hertz rental or a U-Haul rental, like the actual use.
So the way the UDO reads now, the zoning, the commercial zoning, they can put something like that in any of the zone commercial areas, or
Not all, because they can't do it in downtown, which is
Right.
commercial. But yeah, C2 or commercial general, which is our kind of medium intensity. In the use table right now, it's allowed.
but we're just trying to restrict it to certain areas.
But I guess what I
Gotcha.
was saying, like, you see people they'll pick a spot, in a parking lot, like, at Food Lion or something, and they pick a corner of the parking lot and they put their cars there and they put them up for sale, or their truck or their boat or their camper. That's more of a private. Is that more of a private?
That'd be a private property issue, or if it's inoperable, Joe could cite the owner of the property, of the vehicle.
And Joe's good, but he can't see everything in this city every day, so it could be sold and gone before he ever saw it.
True. So if you see any, you just give us a call.
All right. Everybody good with that?
I like it.
The next one is camping. We added a definition and use standard for residential uses. So for single-family, detached, and townhomes, just restricting camping with a tent and a bathroom that is accessible to 14 days per year.
14 days per year.
This is in line with state parks and national parks. It's squatters. It's called. You know where the 14 days come from?
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, like if you lived out of your camper and you went to a national park, you have to move every 14 days.
Within the national park, you just have to move sites.
You can't stay in the same site.
Right.
Yeah.
But like if I wanted to have my grandkids over 52 Saturdays out of the year and they wanted to camp in my backyard, that's allowed still, correct? Because I'm over the 14-day limit, but I'm not 14 consecutive days. I'm 1 day a week.
Technically, no, but the likelihood that we would get a complaint about that
I mean, if
is
my neighbor, somebody calls, so that they're building a fire every Saturday night and the kids are screaming till 1 a.m. But we're camping.
that's not a problem. It would be if the tent was left up.
Oh, gotcha.
If you take it down in between, you're not gonna get a complaint.
Okay. I mean, I'm just playing devil's advocate.
Oh, sure, this is a sticky one.
So is it 14? Yeah, this says 14 days out of the year. Is it 14 days out of the year or 14 consecutive days?
14 days.
days.
Oh, that's not where it came
That's
from.
not
gotcha.
where it- yeah.
Yeah, that's not.
We could change it to consecutive.
I mean, what's the intent? The intent is you don't want somebody staying out there for long periods of time.
I would think it'd be a lot shorter than 14 days, too.
Yeah.
Mr. Lamb, would you like to elaborate on the intent?
Okay, this goes,
Yeah, no,
this has been around, we've been fighting this for years. The gist and what cities come up, what the staff's come up with to help us. There's a homeless guy in the woods between two subdivisions.
Yeah.
The guy that owns the land, I think is paying him to be there. He's stopped.
Paying him to be there?
I don't know the exact details. The guy didn't, partner with me. Okay. Okay. This guy's been in a lot of trouble with two subdivisions. So this will solve the problem for him, and it also solves the problems for other neighborhoods going in the future. I got a whole long ton of more information on it, but that's basically the gist. And this is what, after a lot of, after an awful lot of people.
I was riding down Hood Road a couple of weeks ago, and there was a tent in the woods right there at the creek.
Yeah,
Right below the church.
we have people
Next
call
door to that
us
subdivision.
about, with properties that are zoned
I
residential
don't know
that
if right there is in the city limits or not, but yeah, and I know there's been people living there off and on for 20 years probably.
This is gonna be incredibly difficult to enforce.
Most
It's
definitely.
almost not worth, it's almost not worth putting in here
Yeah, but
because of how difficult it's gonna be to enforce.
But it needs to be in the language, I think.
Now, if consecutive, that would be easier to enforce.
Yeah.
But if it's a total out of the year, I
Okay.
mean, you guys gonna keep tabs?
I think it
But,
should be a whole lot less than
I don't think they
14
want to
days.
do
No,
that.
I don't think you want to.
okay.
I mean, there's, I could be on the same piece of property for 20 out of 30 days and move my tent.
But this doesn't
Never
require.
be able to keep up with it. And the homeowner or a neighbor would never be able to say, oh, he's been there for 3 days, prove
Yeah,
it.
prove it.
Like,
Right.
it's gonna be.
Well, in this case,
And I'm curious at how, even with trying to keep up with this, what's the penalty? Where are we going with it?
Yeah.
I'm not sure that.
So it's,
I
gonna be
think
tough.
I
That one's
think
gonna be tough.
I would reconsult on this simply because of squatting, and I would bring it down to less of a days of the year and more of a consecutive.
Days in a row.
Days in a row. I mean,
'Cause,
Okay.
yeah, he just hit on something.
To a week or something.
sure, that's
Like,
great
squatting,
feedback.
because if someone pops up in the back of my property, for one, it's trespassing. If he's on my neighbor's property, I'm still gonna call. And
Right.
as soon as I call, I'm calling the police. I mean, so it's not like I'm calling code enforcement about a tent. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
I'm curious as to where this never-ending circle is gonna end up.
Because-
I think it's a little gray.
In last week's news, they had the city of Atlanta, and they talking about, when you said squatters, that I remembered people that have their homes for sale that have moved, or they've got rental property,
Yeah.
and people are squatting, and they won't do anything about it, and the homeowner has no legal recourse.
guys, okay, this has been a struggle for, 500 homes.
Struggle.
Yeah.
Why is it a
This
struggle?
guy, the one guy that we've had a problem with, he stalked one lady, he's done several other odds and ends, screamed at 2 9-year-olds for a while. Anyway, so I don't tell you this is gonna solve the problem, but it's a step in the right direction.
But it's not gonna accomplish anything.
We don't know that, we haven't done it yet.
But he's not gonna ever know that this is enforced either.
Oh, well, yes, he will. There are that many people, Joe will get plenty of calls.
Code enforcement isn't gonna come out there and deal with this.
Yeah, I think this is a police
trespassing
matter.
It's not, they own it, so it's
The
not.
person staying there owns the property?
No,
Well, now, she says yes, you say no.
Well,
I've met the guy, both of them, I know.
The guy is camping on his own property.
No,
both.
well, yeah, every now and then, in the summertime, the owner might camp there, but
Now, we don't need to get in a situation where we're telling the owner what they can do with their own property in that regard. If they want to go out.
there's
and
no
camp.
back, what it cleanly says, you can camp if you got a bathroom.
But I used to backpack
On residential
and camp
land.
for days and days when I was in high school and college, and we never had a bathroom.
Yeah, but this is on residential land.
But if his property, is it residential or is it undeveloped?
It's zoned residential.
Oh, it's zoned residential.
Well, I had a guy down on my property that was actually living back there.
And you didn't know it?
Of course I did not.
Yeah.
Because if I did, you would not have known him either. Would have got a little something.
So if you remove the maximum and just left the approved sanitary facilities, it would take care of this guy,
Well, that's from our point of view, but
right? I mean, I'm just, that would either require somebody to build, you either have to be on property with a house or property that has access to sanitary facilities. And if that's the case, do we care if they're camping out in their backyards?
That's an option as well.
So if you're camping in your own backyard, I'm assuming you can go in the house and use the restroom.
That's
Correct.
And then do you care?
That's the way.
My point to the root of this issue is that it's not the camping that's the problem. It's
Right.
what he's doing.
It's trespassing.
During the daytime. If
But
he's
it's-
stalking somebody, it's a police matter.
Well,
If
Well-
he's, you know, if he's trespassing on somebody else's property, it's a police matter. The camping, I don't.
Well, he's
see
not
where
dressed,
this-
well, when he leaves that, but, you know, there's no, that is his word against whoever called, but, okay, the words that they came up with is what the staff attorney the city's attorney came up with. That's the words, okay? Well, that's what Ruth
The
said.
words here is what the city attorney came up with.
That's what Ruth
No,
said.
staff did research with other jurisdictions and then ran the language by him.
No, well, that's
I
not
think
what
we're
Ruth
getting
told
into
me.
a dangerous precedent of, you know, if you're just out there camping on your own property, but if it's zoned residential, I mean, is this guy just like out in an open area like the front of this
Yes.
room right here?
Yes.
Or is he in the woods?
Both, but mainly, it's wooded for the most part.
And the tent stays up all the time.
Is this a property violation or a personal violation?
I'm not sure what you mean by that.
Are you enforcing, I mean, just say it's him one day and it's his wife the next and it's his kid the next. I mean, are we counting camping days a tent is put up on a piece of property, whether someone's in it or not?
Well,
That probably is how we would do it. I
but
do
if there's no
understand how great
bathroom,
it
it
is.
doesn't matter whether it's 1 day or 100 days. That's the trump card. There's no bathroom.
I mean, I don't know.
And if he whips it out to pee, it's a police matter.
Well,
I keep going back, I
It
feel like.
is. It would
I'm-
be a police
I'm confused
matter.
at how much of the matter is
a civil matter
enforceable from a
from the
code
codes,
enforcement.
yeah.
And I agree, it's sticky, and it would likely not be used very often, but could potentially provide teeth to enforcement for problem areas. I will say this was initiated by residents and city council person for staff to research. So this is where we've landed, but I'm happy to take a look at the consecutive language. Or you could also, just as part of your recommendation, recommend that that not be included. It's up to you.
Well, I don't know, that seemed like there was a show once, 10 or 15 years ago, where the guy's house burned. It was uninhabitable. He pitched a tent in the backyard and lived there. That show went on for 3 or 4 seasons. So he was living in the tent in his backyard. He couldn't even go in the house to use the restroom. I don't know where he used it. They didn't cover that.
Right.
But he's still on his property. 'Cause
Yeah.
he couldn't afford to go anywhere else.
Well, but we also have a provision that you can't live in a camper or an RV or something on your
He was in a tent.
property. Well, same. This is what we're trying to get at, is that you can't live.
That tent was in Hollywood, John.
On a soundstage.
Anything's okay in Hollywood.
Beverly Hills.
We have had inquiries about people wanting to live in a tent while they built their house, and we've said no, but we don't really have anything to really enforce that.
I can take you to a piece of property right now. It's not in the city limits. They're building a house and their camper's been sitting there for probably 5.5 months.
Right.
Right there in the front yard. Now, I don't know if anybody's staying there, but it's a deterrent to keep people from coming in at night and stealing construction material. But I wouldn't want to step on that land after dark and have somebody meet me with a 12 gauge coming out of the camper, you know? I don't know.
Well, I can certainly pass along reservations.
It needs to be
I mean, am I
reconsidered.
off track here, or is that how y'all feel? Well, everybody.
Yeah.
On the piece of land is there. There's no home. It's just open land
And mainly trees, probably.
with just a
Let's just
Tree.
say,
Tent in the
let's
middle.
say you leave the language the way it is. Is this the section for it?
It's in multiple sections. It's in single family detached and then single family attached in the definition and use standards.
Yeah. Even though a tent is not considered a dwelling, and other. What's the definition of the dwelling? I gotta look that back up. Is it considered a dwelling?
No.
All right, let me ask you this question then. Let's say they don't have a tent, but they've built a lean-to.
Well, that would
No
be an
bathroom.
unpermitted structure, so we would
But a
also,
lean-to's not really a permanent structure either. I mean,
If you don't have
I mean, is it? I wouldn't consider it.
But the trump card is always comes back to no bathroom.
So the property owner is aware that he's living there too.
Oh, yeah. It's part of you got 30 or 40, if you got an hour, we'll go through it.
Porter John was out there next to his tent. Y'all feel better?
Well, actually, he could not get a porta-john there because he would not, I guess you could if you could get enough guys to pick it up and carry it, but.
They couldn't get the truck back there to drop it off?
No.
Because it's just not.
They don't have access.
But it just
No
has to be on
driveway.
the property.
That's true.
Access
Put it out by the
to an
road.
It
approved
doesn't have to be next to his tent.
That's right.
Doesn't actually have,
but again, 14 days, if it's there.
Would they have to move the porta-john too?
I don't know. I'm not, this is, again, I understand. It's,
You see where we're going?
I
mean,
do.
we're just-
but it never mentions moving in that is on the land, doesn't matter whether
where
it's.
on the land?
Yeah.
Have you thought about moving?
Now I have.
I mean, I'm with you. I got woods that border my subdivision too, and I would not want somebody staying back there.
What's his reason for staying there? What is his
He can.
reason? Surely someone has talked.
What's his reason for being there?
Well, yeah.
I mean, that doesn't really matter. I don't
That's,
feel.
well, and actually, I mean, I can't really, his effect is to harass those two subdivisions. Now, whether that's the intent or not, I can't really answer that.
To be honest with you, I kind of,
Actually, three subdivisions, one's being built.
We change the language a little bit and go even stricter. Because this is based on a city ordinance. If we were talking about rural Greenville County, Spartanburg County, then I would lean towards more of a consecutive 7 day, 14 days or something, and lean towards more of language that aligned with the national park statutes and state park statutes. But because this is going to be applicable to city, and this is going to apply, it's not really whether it's your tent or your property. What we're talking about is camping in the city. And what we don't want is tents popping up right here and down the street and all over, because that's another issue, which I'm not saying we don't have already, but I think we need to look for more of a, 2 day, 3 day consecutive and violation thereafter. I mean,
Okay.
you know what I mean?
All right.
Do we have kind of
In line with me?
consensus?
Sure, I mean,
With that,
As long as we got the bathroom thing in there, we're good, because.
Takes care of your problem.
Yeah.
with that, but now this would have bathroom, I think. A lot of these little parks are popping up all over in the county, Greenville and Spartanburg, where people, professionals, not homeless or down on their luck, people are bringing in their motorhomes and their campers because they're working remote in Greer, but they live in Minnesota, and they're here for 6 months. Instead of paying rent, they pay a rental fee to bring their motorhome or camper in, and they're sitting
That's
on
That
a.
way, that's a different section of the code.
That's also prohibited, so.
prohibited in the city.
That's
and
prohibited in the city limits, but, just outside the city, going down 101 and going down Wade Hampton, we have that now. Because it's become popular for folks to do that.
That's different. Outside of the city, it's different.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, I want to open up a campground right outside the city and let people stay there for 6 months or a year. I mean, people come in. I mean, that's what's crazy and crazy good about this economy is that we've got business here and we've got contractors here, and most of them are pulling a fifth wheel and staying until the job's done and going back because we don't have their trade here. So that's different. But I think that.
But they can't
Really
put the
kind of
fifth wheel in the city.
the whole like weird 14 days a year is kind of
I don't see
it's
how
just
you
kind of out
enforce
there in
that.
space for me. It's kind of
Okay.
a out of the park random number, and the wording for me, I definitely think it's going to be hard to enforce.
Okay,
But
so we'll
think-
do some research and see if we can find other jurisdictions that use consecutive and what that number looks like.
Yeah, I mean, I think it needs to be a consecutive language and tighter.
Well, okay, I can support all that, but if they're going back, then it's not gonna make it to council next month.
It will. We'll just,
Okay,
Right.
as long as it's making it to council next month, I don't care.
Hey,
Yeah.
we're just a recommendation.
I know.
We're just a recommendation.
Oh, I understand that, but if, we're still recommending something, so.
Paul, doors open at 8 o'clock tomorrow morning, all right?
Well, me and them are on the same sheet. Problems over there.
we will, in the interim, do that research and present it with,
Plus, you really
with that
you've got
reading.
more time between now and this going to council anyway than you
Correct,
typically have.
than we normally do.
Got a few extra days.
All right.
Okay, I feel like we have pretty good consensus. So the next section is signs. We moved a reference about freestanding signs needing to be at least 200 feet apart. We just moved the reference because it was in a section that it was just really hard to find, and so we just moved it. We didn't create it, just moved it. We did update the allowances for changeable copy or EMC signs. The current UDO only allows them in monument signs in
Outside.
corridor commercial, or, yeah, so basically C3. So we are just still allowing them in C3, but it doesn't really matter what sign. So if it's a pole sign or a pylon, as long as it's in C3 and meets the other standards for size, then that would be okay.
What about during the political season and at the corner of, A and B Street? You've got 10 political signs that, they technically are on somebody's property.
Yeah,
That probably already isn't allowed now.
correct. Yeah, we
But
can
who's enforcing that,
code enforcement if we get calls or if they drive around.
But they will.
They will, they take them. And if they're in the right of way, they take them.
Drive up, there's somebody walking around, there's somebody driving around pulling signs out of every street corner.
Yep, 100%.
Seen them do it.
Yep.
Right after the election, they have to have them removed.
We also added setback references to each of the sign tables. It was in the general language at the beginning, but again, hard to find. We removed the language above entrance for wall signs. Thought that was too restrictive. And then we removed some landscaping requirements for monument signs.
Okay.
All right.
Any concerns or issues?
Can we move on to buffers?
Okay. Buffers, we reduced a type 3 buffer to type 2 between medium density, high density, regional commercial, and corridor commercial. Just felt like those are really intense uses for both, and so they didn't need as big of a buffer between each other. Now, there's still, of course, between those intense uses and less intense, like your old R12, they're still large. And that is page 211.
All right.
Any concerns? Okay. For screening, we updated provisions for underground dumpsters for Sutera, exempting downtown from screening requirements, and then also allowing administrative kind of waivers for screening depending on the site. And that's really for if it's completely surrounded by concrete. We're not going to make you rip out all that concrete and plant some bushes. That would be the exception rather than the rule, but wanted to make sure there was some flexibility
What page
there.
is that on about the underground dumpsters?
211, or sorry, 214.
The only thing I see on 214 was that planning director may reduce or waive screening requirements, right?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
So, but when you say, like, your screening requirements, though, you're talking about plants, or you can always put up a screen around something even if it's visible, right? I mean, they can always put up something to hide a dumpster or.
Yeah, the dumpster still would have to have one. It's really aimed at the underground dumpsters, not necessarily requiring them to have it in some situations.
Yeah, because I can't see it anyway.
Gotcha. Okay.
So if they're visible from public right-of-ways, it basically gives y'all the deciding factor? Gives you kind of subjective?
It will be subjective. And it's really meant for, again, areas like downtown or areas that are all asphalt or concrete, that having, forcing someone to rip up a bunch of that just to plant some things doesn't quite make sense. This was raised with concerns for downtown. And again, would be kind of an exception rather than a rule. We'd have to write a justification and explain why.
Like seeing the Hampton Inns right there on Jason Street?
Yes, I do believe
Got any screening?
Parkview has landscaping for their underground dumpster. But again, that was kind of a ground-up site. But there are some that are converting from large above-ground dumpsters to underground, and we don't want to discourage that.
Okay. All right, next.
All right, the next section is page 217 and then page 224, updating open space table for non-residential development. We had open space requirements and passive amenity requirements for non-residential. So, like, for example, the self-storage that you guys, I believe, saw on, or maybe that was BZA. That was probably BZA. There was a self-storage on Buncombe that was going to be required to have 5 or 10% open space in addition to their required buffers. And
Out there across from Dillard's. Is that the one?
It's Buncombe across from the dental office.
Yeah.
Yeah. And just in general, we realized for non-residential, we have a lot of buffering in place. We don't really having passive open space doesn't make a lot of sense. So it's that one. Any concerns or questions with those? Okay, the next section is cluster development, and we already kind of went over this one. We did get rid of the lot placement, like where they had to put certain lots. We inserted side setbacks into the table and allowed 5 feet. Again, that 30% of buffers counting towards open space requirement. We inserted the word minimum to type 2 buffer standards in the requirements. And then again, we reduced the number of required housing types or lot sizes from 3 to 2. And that's pages 303 and 304.
Okay. All that was in pretty much in the previous comments on the section above.
Yes, from the engineer, from above. And then last, page 330 and 331, we're trying to update the definition of structure to what it was in our old zoning ordinance. The way it was written was anything erected, and it was very confusing for us when it was just like a concrete set of stairs. Typically in our old zoning ordinance, that would not count as an encroachment into the setback, but would under the new code. So we just reverted back to the definition of structure from the old zoning ordinance.
Not to include a tent.
Tent would not be considered a structure, no. And that is it.
All right. Anybody have any questions for staff? Do we have a recommendation?
Move to recommend approval.
We have a motion for approval. Do we have a second?
The understanding that staff's gonna look at the camping language again.
Would you be open to that amendment?
I got confidence.
Are you amending your
Sure.
recommendation?
Yeah.
Okay. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion for approval with some further
Additional
staff,
considerations for
looking
camping.
into, and we have a second. So let's vote.
Ms. Jones?
Oh, yes.
Mr. Cerna?
Yes.
Mr. Lavender?
Yes.
Mr. Booker?
Yes.
Mr. Lamb?
Yes.
Mr. Holland?
Yes. All right, is there anything else for the good of the city or the planning
Oh,
commission?
yeah, they all had something.
Do y'all have anything else for us?
Kind of disappointed we didn't get to vote on the fireworks. Motion to dismiss. Adjourn.
We have a motion to adjourn. We're adjourned.
Once you use them, they're gone.
Well, right. It's like $700 bills on
How are they gonna know the next one's go off?
Well, I think they were looking to see like.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, they want to test the
Thank you.
location and stuff.
Sorry we kept you so long.
I'm sorry. It was far from fascinating.
Pack your tent up and go home now.